Hello, I'm Gabby, and this is my February art study journal, where I'll be ranting about things I practiced and learned throughout the month of February. I've been drawing for around 3 years, but I've never really done much practice, and one of my goals for 2025 was to do more art studies and improve my art. But right now it's February, and I haven't really been doing that. Studying art has always been very daunting for me, and I have no idea where to start. And I think in general, I just find it difficult to start things. In fact, I'm not sure if I'll ever even post this video because I might not even edit it. But anyways, I decided to make a schedule to plan out the month using these two videos by Bluebiscuits and NIRO to help guide me. I wrote some notes on them, which I will just quickly go over if I can find them. Alright, so Bluebiscuits' video talked about things she would practice throughout the year, starting with realism, then painting, then fundamentals, shading and lighting, style studies, backgrounds, and finally different mediums. And then NIRO's video went over, I think it was mostly focused on the body, starting with the arms and torso, then the head, the body, and value studies. I also wanted to have a paper and pencil on me at all times, like NIRO mentioned, but my very first sketchbook, which I haven't even filled halfway, is really huge and I barely use it, so instead I found this random smaller book which I brought to school, but spoiler alert, I've only filled out like 3 pages. Anyhow, I made a schedule on my own split into 4 weeks, starting with grayscale still lifes using lineofaction.com, where I wanted to focus on simplifying forms and observing values. And then week 2 would be timed figure drawings with lineofaction.com, where I wanted to start with basic shapes and then go into skeleton structure, followed by proportion and muscle anatomy. Week 3 would be backgrounds in 1, 2, and 3 point perspective, focusing on trying to create depth. Finally, the last half week or so would be focused on fundamentals like value, perspective, form, etc. And with that said, let's get into the video. Day 1. I didn't have much time to draw, but I tried the Line of Action site for the first time and decided to just screenshot some objects from it. I found these 2 glass bottles easier to draw because they looked to me like a random jumble of values, and if I scribbled enough, they looked alright. However, I did struggle a lot with these wooden shapes because I had trouble differentiating all the different values. I first eyeballed the thing, and if I had trouble with it, I would do a traced version which has a blue dot next to it, and you can see that I struggled with the shape of the object and also the different values. For day 2, I did some more practices and I tried to pay attention to my values. Specifically, I wanted to exaggerate my darker tones. I also wanted to try more complicated shapes to practice simplifying forms, because if you look at this teacup I drew, the shape is rather strange. And if I remember correctly, I eyeballed that. So for the days to come, I wanted to practice more complicated shapes with more efficient rendering. To practice with darkening my values, I first did an eyeballed copy, and then I dropped values that I figured might not be correct, and I fixed the original drawing. For day 3, I did not do practices. I did want to practice in my sketchbook during school, but I couldn't really find anything to hone in on and draw, so instead I just doodled in my sketchbook, and I also did this quick drawing that took like an hour and a half, and at the time I was really proud of it, and I am still quite proud of it. It's very cute. For day 4, I drew Lollipop from BFB for some reason, even though I haven't watched object shows in like a year. But anyways, I tried to block in my colors starting with only pure black and pure white, then slowly going in with more values. I also tried more complex shapes like these scissors, but as you can see it didn't go that well. Although I do think I eyeballed that one. I think the spoon rendering looked pretty nice though. I wanted to spend less time on rendering, so I didn't bother erasing the outlines, but I think it still looked fine. I feel like the objects look really bad until I render them, so I wanted to practice more with the shapes. Also, I don't know why I wrote February 3rd on the image, because I'm pretty sure that was the 4th. Also, I was looking through my photos and I found that on day 5 I was drawing this. I think it was like when I just started watching Link Click. It's pretty cute, but the anatomy is a little bit like, I don't know why their arms are so short. Day 6. I tried to do some more complicated objects, first copying the image, then tracing it to compare the actual shape with the way I drew it. And then I'd write some notes. Since tomorrow is the last day of this quote-unquote unit, I wanted to sort of give myself a final challenge, so I started trying to draw this weird shirt thing I found. I want to figure out how folds work so I can sort of come up with like a formula to render them, because if I'm being honest, I'm really bad at rendering clothes. Day 7. So I finished that bendy cloth thing and I think I made it a bit too shiny, but I do think I understand clothing rendering a little bit better now. I'm pretty proud of this drawing I did after finishing the bendy cloth thing, but after that I was probably burnt out because I just started doodling random things. In conclusion, I think week 1 went pretty well. My biggest point of growth from what I see is that I learned to push my values more and maybe draw what I see, but I think that depends on how complicated the object I'm drawing is. I also think I've improved at rendering a bit, and I think I draw somewhat faster now. For day 8, I did not have time to draw, but I did note that I wanted to practice heads because I've gotten really lazy to the point that I just use circles to draw heads. Anyways, on to day 9. I tried to figure out how to draw heads and more realistic or detailed facial features, and I read some random article on the Loomis method, but I didn't really get it. I used my phone right in front of me to do 5-minute line of action, like pose practices, and I do think they helped me figure out how to draw more dynamic poses. And also, I used to practice poses using manga panels, and they always looked really wonky, so I realized it's probably easier to use real people. For day 10, I did more 5-minute line of action practices, this time trying to capture the flow of the pose and understand the form instead of just drawing what I saw. But I think it ended up actually looking worse than the day before, and the drawings gradually got worse the more I did, starting from left to right. This is probably because I don't actually know anything about anatomy, and I feel like I drew slower today even though I was actively trying to draw faster. So I think maybe I should try drawing with a shorter time limit tomorrow and see if that'll be any better. For day 11, I did some awful sketchbook drawings during school, and I tried to use circles and stickmen to build the gesture or something. I don't really know. I also got a bunch of art books from my local library, but this is me after the month, and I'm here to tell you that I still have the books and I have not read a single one. Before I start day 13, spoiler warning for Link Click, which is a very good show that you should watch if you haven't already. Anyways, show it in like 5 seconds, so if you don't want to see spoilers, skip to the next day, and I've put timestamps in the description. Alright, for day 13, these past days I felt like my anatomy has gradually just been getting worse and worse. So when I happened to make a cool looking sketch, I got really excited and I decided to just finish it. I think it took around 5 hours, and I did do it in one day because I am horrible. I'm really proud of the clothing rendering because in the past I always felt super lost when rendering clothes, but I think it looked pretty good this time, and I used a bunch of references. And I also like how I drew the pose. For day 14, I tried to lock in because it's the last day of the unit, but I'm thinking I should extend the unit a day because I missed so many days. I did a bunch of 2-minute studies and tried to draw some poses on my own, to which I realized that I struggle greatly with perspective and foreshortening. I've actually practiced foreshortening a lot in the past and sucked, but I think the reason why it always looks so awful is because the perspective is wrong, so I need to do more box practices at some point. It's nice that I can do the gesture drawing things, whatever they're called, faster now. Today I sort of just drew what I saw though without thinking much about the form, so I don't think that was very helpful. I don't know how I feel about this unit. I feel like I studied everything wrong, and that's not to mention all the days that I missed. Hopefully the background unit is better. For day 16, I ended up doing another link click drawing, but this one's spoiler free. I usually don't record my full drawings because when I start them, I'm usually just doing a sketch which I think I'll erase, but then sometimes I'm like halfway through and I realize it's a bit too late to start recording now. But anyways, I tried to do a coolish looking background for this, but I think it's a little hard to read, and I originally just started this drawing wanting to practice doing 3/4 heads from below after I saw how someone else drew them. Most of the time I did on this was spent on the background. I think it took around 2 to 3 hours total, and I'm starting to get more familiar with rendering clothing, even though I'm just scribbling random strokes and hoping for the best. I don't really know the difference between how I rendered clothes before and now, so I don't know why it looks better, and I don't even know if it looks better. For day 17, I was out for the entire day, so I just did this dumb doodle on my phone. And for day 18, I was also busy, so I tried to draw a background, but it looked really bad. I'm aware that these last few days have been completely off course and unproductive, and to be honest, I kind of expected this when I started the month, but hopefully things get better. For day 19, I actually did a background practice, and I did an hour practice using a reference from lineofaction.com. Obviously, it's easier to make a good-looking background when I have references to directly copy, but when I try to draw them on my own, they usually look really terrible. I was a bit lost on how to simplify the flowers, but I think this worked okay. And I realize now that my colors are a bit off, but whatever. For day 20, I tried to draw a background from imagination, or like without a direct reference. But as you can see, I don't really know how to make it pop. I'm not sure if that's the word. It looks very unfinished in my opinion. Although I do think I learned a bit from my practice from yesterday. I sort of have a process now, starting with the farthest parts of the background, like the sky, and then slowly coming to the closest parts, so like sky, clouds, mountain, water, umbrella. I'm doing this because most of my drawings consist of like 1 to 5 layers, so it's probably just easier for me to do it this way. Day 21. Directly copying references has definitely made my process a lot faster. Of course, I know this is just practice. I wanted to figure out how to simplify detailed parts for a more efficient workflow, like the flowers from this practice. Though I was a bit lost on how to simplify all the trees in the background, I sort of managed to make it work by just scribbling. For whatever reason today, it was really easy for me to draw the characters in, maybe because they were tiny and in stiff poses, but I'm proud anyways. I know that I'm not very good at drawing characters up close, but I like to draw sceneries, and I've always wanted to make art that sort of creates a mood, usually like a comfortable, nostalgic feeling. So this practice has been nice for that. It also helped me a bit with lighting because often when I draw characters up close, I just disregard the light source and do whatever lighting I think looks cool, even if it's not correct. And also these are just some random sketches I did during school. For day 22, I realized that on my schedule I wrote to do 1, 2, and 3 point perspective on my background unit, and I realized that I completely forgot to do that, so I did it for a little bit. I think it will also help me for drawing poses because drawing poses in perspective has always been a struggle for me, but using the box with the vanishing point guidelines really helped me. I mean, I've tried drawing poses in boxes before, but I always drew the boxes really sloppy, and I think that just made me more confused. Anyways, after that, I was kind of burnt out, so I did this graveyard photo from lineofaction.com, but I got really lazy and it looked pretty bad. I was trying to figure out how to simplify that huge tree, but eventually I just gave up and did whatever. For day 23, I wanted to do a final project for the background unit where I felt like I learned a lot but also barely anything at the same time. I tried to draw a background of a specific place, Time Photo Studio, but without a reference to directly copy. Basically, I just drew it from a different angle. And in my practices, I've yet to draw an actual building, so yeah. This drawing also contains link-click spoilers, but I'm just gonna crop it out for these next few days because I think this is a major part of my practice, and I can show the uncropped version later. I've always been very terrified of drawing really geometric objects and backgrounds, so this was quite a challenge for me, and you can see that not everything is angled correctly, but I think I did pretty well for my first try. I've also noticed that ever since starting my background unit, I've been drawing so much faster, even without using direct references. This sketch took me a little over an hour, which I know is still a long time, but for me it's a huge improvement. I think if I tried this a month ago, it would have taken me a few hours to sketch the background and maybe another hour or so to sketch the character in. And on that note, I think using cubes to block in the body has helped me a lot. I don't know if it was my anatomy unit that encouraged me to do that, but I think I visualize bodies in a more 3D space than before, and it really helps me to draw them, especially draw them fitting into the environment. Day 24. I was thinking of this drawing like a summative project for the month, so I figured I should try to practice my line art as well. My sketch usually looks better than my line art for whatever reason, so I was hoping that if I weighted my lines, the line art would look better. I think the sketch still looks better, but whatever. I'm an idiot and I always like to stick to 1 or 2 brushes for an entire piece, and usually that brush is an opacity brush. So this time I tried to use a thickness by pressure brush for my liner, and I think it looked better. I haven't yet added line weight to the background, but I'll do it tomorrow. I feel like my sketch holds more emotion, but at the same time, usually when I color my sketches, they end up looking really unfinished, and I'm way too lazy to clean them up. So maybe this will look better when I color it. I think currently I'm at around 4 hours and 15 minutes in the piece. Day 25. I finished my drawing, but I realized that I have no idea how to do dramatic lighting, so I'm thinking I should spend my last few days of February practicing lighting. I think it's pretty clear that I've improved over this month, even though I'm not too happy with this piece in specific. It feels a bit lacking. I used to avoid using adjustment layers because I felt like it was cheating, but lately I've been using them a bit more. I spent a while trying to figure out how to get the lighting to work in this piece, and adjustment layers really helped me out. Because if I manually chose colors, it'd be a very ugly piece. My original goal for this piece was to practice backgrounds, and in that aspect I think I did pretty good. But unfortunately, I think the sketch still looks a little better. But I did have a lot of fun doing the liner, and I'll probably be doing that more in the future. I also think I'm improving at rendering clothes. I mostly tried to cell shade for this piece because often when I try to do soft shading I over render. And I'm gonna uncrop this in like 5 seconds because I have something to say about the part I cropped out. So I had difficulty making this hand stand out, and I think that kind of downgraded my piece because it's like, what is this guy staring at? I'm not really sure what I should have done about it, but I think overall it's a nice drawing, and the goal was to improve, and I did. So for day 26, I know I said I wanted to learn dramatic lighting, but I've really been wanting to learn how to draw people kissing, so I just decided to do that. I know it looks really weird, and I've actually always struggled with drawing side views, so I think this helped me a little bit, but I know it looks kind of strange. I actually really like doing line art now, and since I sketch a lot faster, I don't feel burnt out by the time I reach the line art stage. My anatomy in this drawing just looks really weird though. I don't know why the guy on the right's arm is like so short, but I also am too lazy to change it. Day 27. As I mentioned before, my sketch usually looks better than my line art, and I think in this case it definitely does. I think my line art looks really stiff, and I should probably do it more loosely. I do want to practice my line art, but I'm not really sure how to go about it. And in this piece, I think most elements of it just look really wrong. And maybe except for the rendering, I'm pretty proud of the rendering. But everything else, like the anatomy, the background, the colors, just look very wrong. So even though I'm not happy with the piece, at least I know what to work on, and I can see the improvement. So that's what is most important to me. Day 28. This is the last day, but this is a bit embarrassing. I thought February was 30 days long, and I didn't realize this was the last day until I looked at my clock at midnight, and I was like, why is it March? So, like I said the other day, I'm gonna list things I've improved on this month. I think I've improved at rendering clothes, head angles, cube drawing, perspective, backgrounds, drawing speed, posing, and maybe lighting line art and faces. I drew for like 4 hours today, so I feel like I'm getting a bit addicted. But anyways, I feel more confident trying new things now, and today I tried to draw some character interactions, which is not something I do often, so I was really happy with this drawing. In conclusion for the month, even though I had trouble starting with the studying, I think the improvement is very clear, and even if it didn't come immediately, I still had a lot of fun practicing. For example, in my still life unit, even though my rendering is terrible without a reference, I was still really proud of my drawings. And I think the biggest improvement for me is that I draw so much faster now, maybe like twice as fast as before. And I also have a lot more fun. So this month was super enjoyable for me, and I hope that I can actually make this video and release it, and maybe make more in the future. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on how I could improve my long form videos if I ever do make more. And before you go, since I'm finishing on this video at nearly the end of March, I've actually done a lot of drawings too in the month of March. So I want to show a before, during, and after comparison of my drawings, because I think I actually improved maybe more in March than I did in February. So stick around for that if you like.